East Africa's largest economy, Kenya, and the United States have resumed physical negotiations for a trade deal expected to be in place before 2025. This is the first in-person round of decisions and discussions under the Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is being pushed by President William Ruto's administration. The Kenya-U.S. partnership was launched in July 2022, with the two countries committing to pursuing enhanced engagement. The partnership is aimed at increasing investments, promoting sustainable and inclusive economic growth, to benefiting workers, consumers, and businesses, including MSMEs, as well as supporting African regional economic integration. While it likely will take up to 2 years to come up with a working trade agreement, Kenya is keen on securing a trade deal with the U.S. before the expiry of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, in 2025, even as other African countries are pushing for an extension of at least 10 years. Joining me now is Satchu, Africa Geo-Economist, macro analyst, and the CEO of Rich Management. Khan, welcome again to Business Edge. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with this. We see that Kenya is looking to put this deal in place before AGOA expires. So starting from there, how beneficial has AGOA really been to Kenya and to other African countries that have been able to take part?
No, AGOA has been uniquely favorable for African countries because it allows tariff-free access into the US market for a huge bundle of African exports. In Kenya's case, it has been a catalyst for the textile industry, and Kenya has been exporting about close to $500 million worth of exports, textile exports into the US. And that's really been under this AGOA platform. For the rest of Africa, definitely a net benefit. And I think that's why so many African countries are engaged in making sure there's a 10-year extension to the current AGOA program.
So how likely do you think that extension will be? Because is this a situation in which Kenya could also benefit from an extension and still have a separate bilateral economic trade deal with the United States? Or is it going to only work as a replacement or substitute for AGOA?
No, I think, first of all, I think AGOA will be, we will get an extension of another 10 years. I think that's a racing certainty. I think the Biden administration is keen to curry favor with African countries, and this has been one of their most effective programs. I think in terms of Kenya's situation, this is a geo-economic play by Kenya. I think, the free trade agreement that Kenya is looking to execute will work in tandem with AGOA and also will have a multiplier effect. I think Kenya is seeking to position itself more closely with the US, and this agreement in particular, I think, is seeking to access cheaper funding for example, the SME sector and for other parts of the economy. And I think that's what this really is about more than anything else.
So you mentioned something I was going to ask later, but let me bring it up now. This is a geo-economic play on the parts of Kenya. It's also a geo-economic play on the parts of the U.S. But overall, when you look at it, this would deepen the Kenya-U.S. trade relationship, even though China is Kenya's biggest import source. How do you think a partnership specific to Kenya like this with the U.S. could affect Kenya's relationship with China?
That's a very interesting question. And I think Kenya will have to play a balancing act between these two superpowers. But increasingly, I see Kenya tilting towards the US. China, notwithstanding the fact China is our biggest trading partner. The issue with China, I think, for Kenya in particular, is that the balance sheet for lending into Kenya is maxed out. I think Kenya is having to pay back the SGR loan. It's becoming quite a burden. And I think in that context of no net new money from China, Kenya has made a decision to pivot in the US's direction. And given the situation in the East African part of the continent, the US sees Kenya as an important partner, not only in terms of trade, but in terms of security and potentially from their perspective, in terms of countering China. How aggressive Kenya can be in countering China is an entirely different matter.
That makes sense. So in 2021, Kenya's exports to the U.S. grew to 59.5 billion shillings. And right now, Kenya is hoping to tap at least 5% of the U.S. market with the potential to earn about more than 2 trillion shillings in export revenues annually. Is this overly ambitious, or do you think Kenya really has what it takes to deliver on this?
I think it's overly ambitious in terms of the multiple that, you're quoting 2 trillion from 59.5 billion, because there's a tremendous amount of capex and investment that's got to go into this in order to serve that kind of increase. However, I think, Kenya has proven to be, particularly in the textile industry, a reliable partner and delivering a solid product, which the American market is keen on. We saw a lot of volatility. For example, a lot of people felt Ethiopia was going to take the lead in that direction, but it hasn't. And I think Kenya is capturing that opportunity. Beyond that, there's probably an opportunity both ways in the soft commodity space. Kenya is a big agricultural economy, and I think would like to see bigger and more exports of its agri products into the US market. But the problem with that will be that Kenya will have to open up its own market to US imports of agricultural products. It'll be interesting to see how the negotiators deal with that issue.
And many people know that the U.S. agricultural market is heavily subsidized, so it allows them to really be quite competitive. And that really was my next question. In terms of this, we can see that the trade deficit is obviously in favor of the United States. So what else does the U.S. gain, aside from making Kenya a geo-economic ally? What really is in it for the U.S. in terms of trade?
Well, I think, if you look at it in the total scheme of things, this is a very small number in terms of the U.S.'s total trade profile. But I think what the US is looking to do is partner more closely with Kenya. You saw that in the appointment of the ambassador, who was one of the founders of a tech company in San Francisco, eBay, and she's been, meeting with the president on a weekly basis practically. So I think the US is trying to connect new parts of the economy with the US. I think that's where the real connection is going to be made and where the opportunity lies for both countries. And I think it is also a powerful signaling effect that Kenya has a special place with respect to the US's Africa strategy.
All right, Ali Khan, before I let you go, this is also part of the push from President William Ruto, and it all falls under the Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership Project. What do you make of STIP as it is? What do you make of sort of the direction that the president is pushing Kenya, whether it be with the U.S., because we can expect to see some kind of agreements probably with the EU as well in the coming years, as well as the UK and Britain as they look to get more trade partners outside of the EU. What do you think of the partnership direction and the partnership project as it is from President William Ruto?
I think President William Ruto, if you look at Kenya during the Kibaki administration and in the Kenyatta administration, it was very China facing. And I think what we're seeing here is a rebalancing by President Ruto, re-engaging the Western world and re-engaging old partners like the European Union. And I think that's probably going to excite the US, it's going to excite the EU to make further investments into Kenya. So I think it's a positive step and speaks to a rebalancing and a gentle pivot away from China.
All right, Ali Khan, Satchu, we'll leave it at that. Yesterday, the trade talks started off. They're meant to last a week, but this whole sort of back and forth and the partnership agreements is going to take probably 2 years before it fully comes into being. So thank you so much. We'll be keeping in touch with you.
Thank you.
And Kenya is East Africa's largest economy and extending its hand of friendship and now much more trade with the benefits it's been getting from AGOA with the U.S. in terms of this decision and partnership could put it on the back foot with China. But at the end of the day, President William Ruto says that his strategic trade and investment partnership project is for the best interests of Kenyans. They are his priority. And that's it on Business Edge for today. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Our website, www.newscentral.africa. And our mobile app can be found for downloading at the Play Store and App Store. 12 p.m. West African time. That's just a few minutes from now. News Central Now comes your way with the latest from here on the continent and beyond. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. I'll see you again soon.